Welcome to Zibub.
Welcome to Zibub. Here we go.
Welcome to Book Club for Movies, everybody. It's June 7th, Thursday. I'm Ryan Miller. And today we're canceling the apocalypse. It's Matt Amber.
Matter Pentecost.
Stacker Pentecost. Still one of the best names in cinema.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I love it.
That isn't in this movie all that much. This is Book Club for Movies, like we might have mentioned. We watch one movie a week. We talk about it one day a week. You should be a part of this conversation through Twitter, Facebook, any other mediums you desire.
Yeah, podcast at bookclubformovies.com.
There you go. This week, it's Pacific Rim 2 or Pacific Rim Uprising, depending on nothing, really. So if you're interested in what we might have to say, get a load of this custom synopsis by our own Matthew Amberg, assuming he did one this week.
I did.
Okay.
All right. Pacific Rim 2 or Pacific Rim Uprising. Nobody can know for sure anymore. Going to roll in at an hour and 50 minutes. Directed by Stephen S. DeKnight. Written by Stephen S. DeKnight, Emily Carmichael, Kira Snyder, and T.S. Norland. Starring John Boyega, Kaylee Spaney, Tian Jing, Scott Eastwood, Bern Gorham, Charlie Day, Jin Zhang, get it right the second time, and Rinko Kikuchi as Mako Mori. It's currently available. Digital releases, Xbox Marketplace, PS Store, iTunes, all those sorts of things. Here is your Pacific Rim 2, Pacific Rim Uprising, Pacific Rim the next synopsis. 10 years after the apocalypse was canceled by Stacker Pentecost, his son Jake is hesitantly conscripted back into the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps to help train a new batch of ragtag Jaeger pilots, including an 11-year-old wonderkind, to fight an incoming threat that may be far more destructive than the kaiju of the past.
Pretty good. Man, I feel
pretty good.
Like they only get better.
Thank you. I work on them.
Much like other multi-film franchises. I'll get out in front of it. I like the movie. Just fine.
Okay.
Too far?
No, do you have more? I didn't know if you were...
No, that's it. Let's go.
Okay.
I've got food to eat.
Thanks for stopping by.
I do
Next
have
week,
more.
Paddington.
I've got plenty more. But I guess maybe it's helpful to start with a little bit of history on this thing. Pacific Rim 1 comes out. What is this? 2000...
Hey Siri, when did Pacific Rim come out?
Pacific Rim was released July 12th, 2013.
2013. Pacific Rim comes out. It's Guillermo del Toro. The Guillermo del Toro.
The one and only.
It's big old robots fighting big old monsters. It's an update to the kaiju film. Kaiju films are Godzilla versus whoever else.
Mechagodzilla.
There you go. So there's a history of films in this genre, but there's also a history of blockbusters. So what I'm trying to get to is that when Pacific Rim came out, I saw a lot of criticism around a big dumb Hollywood movie once again type thing.
Sure.
And in a post-Transformers world, that type of criticism has become increasingly hard, I would say. You know?
Not without its merit.
Well, I'll go on record as having said that the Transformers movies are pretty bad.
No, I don't know if that's
right?
a controversial opinion, but let's treat it like it is.
We're going to lose some viewers.
Treat it like we own it.
But it needs to be said. So it was very frustrating when Pacific Rim came out, and I loved it to freaking death. I hear some of these people say, oh, here's the latest Transformers movie. Here's the biggest, loudest thing that came out this year that you can never tell what's going on, and the military aspects of it are so completely wrong that it's, unrecognizable to military fans everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. That's the problem right there.
But I'll defend Pacific Rim to the death as absolutely not one of those movies. It's released in the same universe as those, and when I say universe, I mean physical universe, IRL people, that the Transformers movies exist in, right? So I get that this is a thing, and we should be careful of these things. But I also get that, again, this comes from a long series of kaiju films wherein they never pretended to grand significance, right? I think this is where these films excel a lot of the times, is they figured out I get sick of myself. I get sick of myself sometimes.
Okay, film schoolie.
Postmodernism before postmodernism figured itself out. So
you're where the depth comes from.
So enter Pacific Rim 2, right? Where it's not made by
Pacific Rim Uprising.
Okay,
we don't know.
Sorry, it's not made by Del Toro. In fact, where did they pick? Who did he entrust this to? This man that gets to write and direct his own.
Stephen S. DeKnight, the man who is responsible for he made Spartacus, the TV show on Showtime, and he also wrote a bunch of and worked with on Daredevil, the Netflix show.
All right, Dollhouse, Smallville, Angel.
Yeah, you're noticing a pattern here. He's a CW writer.
Got it. Okay. You know what? That actually makes sense. I think that's probably a smart choice. Because we're going to get into talking about a lot of the themes of this film. And in a lot of ways, I know this probably seems almost like a dumb movie to do a deep dive on.
Not even a little bit.
Okay. And part of that comes from the fact that I think it's fun to have a discussion about imperfect films. We're lucky in this podcast, we get to choose movies we've wanted to see for a long time or movies that have already, made the grade, so to speak, like classics for, last week we did French Connection, right? That turns out is a good movie.
Who knew?
Pacific Rim Uprising, it's not as strong as the first.
Agreed on that.
Okay. I'm going to let you go now. All of the veiled responses to my statements, I'm not sure. What do you think?
Number one, I was just enjoying hearing you give me the information that you have. I know you think this is going to go one way, and it's probably not going to go how you're
I'm not sure. I have no idea now.
So on one hand, I agree with a whole lot of what you said. I think this is a good movie in terms of kaiju movies. I think it's a good movie in terms of being a fun kind of follow-up to Pacific Rim while advancing the story to a point. Well, and again, I agree with you that it's not quite as good as the original. And I don't know. I honestly, thinking about that movie in particular, because I was in the same boat as you. There are certain directors in this world that have, for me, never released a bad movie. Del Toro is one of them. I love all of his movies. You can put warts on them, whatever you want to say. I love them. He has an aesthetic that I love. He has a style that I love. His the way he creates language, all of it. I love it.
Right.
And there's, like I said, there's only a handful of people. Del Toro is one of them. Wes Anderson's one of the only others that exists for me. And so I was going to love this movie. I was predisposed. It was going to have to be something shockingly awful. Yes. I'm sorry. The first Pacific Rim. It's going to be some super shocking to be, for me to not be into it. And I loved it. Beth and I both really enjoyed that movie. It was fun. It had great action to it. It was super easy to follow. I don't know who the hell was saying hard to follow. Really not hard to follow. Super slow punches from a giant robot.
Right.
If you can't follow that, I really don't ever want you to watch the Bourne movie, because you will have a seizure. Like, it's just going to happen.
Well, especially to compare it to something like a Transformers action scene. Like, it's very obvious that at some point, the people, that whole franchise, like, it just smacks of somebody somewhere saying, you know what, it doesn't matter because people are going to eat it up anyways.
Well, and I think that comparing those two is apples to oranges anyways. They come from a totally different space. And I'm not talking even about like the licensing in general. I'm talking about even the way the movies were put together, like the way Michael Bay brought Transformers. That's nothing like how Del Toro brings what he brings to Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim for all again, warts and all, Pacific Rim has a heart to it that threads and it matters from the beginning, like especially once you're introduced to Mako, and Mako is. Getting to Pacific Rim Uprising, this is where a lot of this goes awry for me. Is the heart's not there for this movie?
Sure.
I think it's a great. It was a fun popcorn movie. Nothing wrong with it. Don't know that I'll ever really go back to it because it's just not that great of a popcorn movie for me. Whereas Pacific Rim, the original, I go back to that. I've watched it a number of times.
Right.
this is fun in the sense that it expands upon that, and there are things that I liked about it. I like it. It's a good movie for that mindset, for going in with popcorn.
And not to go, hopefully to go forward here, it's got a fantastic opener.
Oh yeah, terrific opener.
It introduces Stagger Pentecost's son, played by John Boyega here, Finn. and it introduces him as kind of, coming from not wealth, but coming from prestige in a way, obviously. But John Boyega is pretty darn good, honestly.
I like John Boyega. I can't give him. I'm not going to say he's the best actor in the world. He's fine. He's a good actor.
Yeah, it's strange. I don't even know if I was referring to him in that way. Like, John Boyega is one of those actors that I feel like he's tailor-made for this movie in a way, and tailor-made for Star Wars in that way too. Like, he has this sort of honesty about him. Like, you see him and what he's doing, and you buy it.
Sure.
And I think he does a good job with this character. Because this character is kind of unique also in that he does come from kind of that lineage, but they show him kind of coming up on the streets and how he's using that too. I mean, it's the classic story of his wasted potential or whatever, right?
Right.
Which is also Pacific Rim. Like, Pacific Rim knows what it is. Like, Guillermo del Toro never made any allusions to this thing being like a great military movie or a great character study. It's a freaking kaiju movie, and it's a freaking awesome kaiju movie.
Yeah, he wanted to make robots fight monsters.
Yeah.
That was it. Like, that was it.
So yeah, Jake in this movie, there's going to be a lot of well-worn tropes. In fact, maybe a little bit more well-worn. And if I had any criticism for this movie, which I have a lot of criticisms, I don't know why I put it that way, it's that it almost doesn't go deep enough on any of them. Like, he has kind of a partner in crime played by...
Kaylee
Spaney. That's a fun name. Amara Namani in the show.
Yeah, a.k.a. Tiny Tina.
Very Tiny Tina-esque. But actually, better than Tiny Tina, I'm going to say.
All right,
actually.
Fair. That's fair. She was by far my favorite part of the movie. I loved that she was great. Good actor. Like, she was a killer. She was killer at that. The character was super fun. We do run into that issue that you were just talking about where everybody in this movie is super shallow. Like, you get a line here and there about Boyega's background, but it's always really surface stuff. Like, you could have been great. Just imagine what we could have been, and it's like, okay, I get it. Not Clint Eastwood. Just because you look like your dad doesn't make you him.
No, it does not. And okay, we're gonna keep going tangent after tangent here. Clint Eastwood's part should have been the Australian's part from the first movie, right? Am I right? Like the son who survived.
Yes. That
should have been him.
Yeah. Which hilariously, where did that guy go? No mention of him.
I don't know. So, could they not get him? Why wouldn't they? That's kind of
so. Let's jump back for a minute here. So starting this movie off, we get this intro of John Boyega's character, and then there's a walkthrough about, and I missed this in the first movie, that for whatever reason, I never considered that there were aliens that were sending the monsters through, and that they were not just other monsters.
Nobody ever called them precursors in the first movie, if
so
I'm correct.
It wasn't... Okay, so good.
No,
so
they gave them names here.
They gave the aliens names. They call them precursors, and those are the ones that are sending the monsters through the breach. Right. And ultimately, what they're trying to do, we find out later on, is they're trying to literally destroy the entire planet in a very specific way, which apparently started with the first movie. They just hadn't put it together yet.
Yeah, which is another leap, but okay.
So they got to destroy the planet in a very specific way, which will allow the precursors to come and recolonize it. So that's kind of and even that is like it's a subplot of subplots. Like the plot ultimately becomes... We end up with a bad Jaeger. That's kind of how if you've seen the trailers, you see there's the Jaegers fighting each other. That's kind of the jumping off point, I guess.
Well, the other competing plot line is that meanwhile Charlie Day's character has gone to work for a foreign company that's
the Shao Corporation.
The Shao Corporation that's pioneering drone-based Jaegers. And that gives way to some rogue Jaegers that attack Gypsy, which they call Gypsy Avenger now.
Gypsy
I believe.
Avenger, yeah.
Didn't need to do that. Gypsy Danger is a better name still.
Agreed.
But yeah, so there's a lot of competing storylines here, and none of them go very deep.
But it's kind of a jumble. It's kind of a mess. Like everything.
It's not hard to follow.
No, not at all.
I don't know.
It's just it's kind of a messy movie. You get so at the beginning of the movie, we go back to Boyega. Boyega is going to. He's leading people that he either owes money to or promised something to. We'd never really know. He's leading them to decommissioned Jaeger yards to find a part that's going to be the most expensive. It's going to be the thing that nobody looks for. So it's usually there, and it's going to make them a ton of money. And then it doesn't work out, and everybody fights. And this is where Amara is introduced, and they we find out that Amara is a really brilliant 11-year-old engineer, and she builds a tiny like a miniature Jaeger, and we're introduced to at that point that's where this all kind of turns into big Jaeger, little Jaeger, fight in the streets. Oh, who's driving the Jaeger? Clint Eastwood.
It's honestly a fantastic beginning to the movie. Like
totally.
That battle between those two is super fun. Like I love that mini Jaeger. Like all of it's super cool. What happens is that they get conscripted after that because they get arrested, and so they find themselves in the Jaeger Corps. Amara as a
cadet.
Pilot in training, cadet, and Jake as a
ranger,
I guess. Yeah, like in charge of training. Which fine, like I buy that all up till then. There's a little back and forth with Clint Eastwood's son, Scott Eastwood.
Oh, I thought you knew his name, and because I was just going to go with it. I knew it was Scott Eastwood. I was just calling him Clint because it's way more fun.
Sure.
Because I like to imagine Clint Eastwood in that role too.
He plays another company man. Like I feel like this is the only thing I've seen him in Fast and Furious. It was the same thing. He's Kurt Russell's little dude.
Aw.
I don't know. You might not have seen those yet. Yeah.
I haven't gotten that far.
Yeah. So he's just another company man, which is fine. Like he serves the role. I still think it should have been the Australian dude, but I also don't know his name, so bad on me. But at this point in the story, this is also where the first glaring and straight up plot hole gets to me.
Yeah.
There are no kaijus. Like there haven't been any for 10 years. This is 10 years after the last battle, right? After they blew up the breach, after they sent a nuke into the breach.
Yeah, after Stacker was a nuke.
So there's all this talk of, like cadets and making the team and training and all this, but there's no threat. Like this is all peacetime. Like there's even a glimmer, and when I say competing storylines, there's a glimmer that Amara thinks the kaijus are gonna come back, and she's the only one that holds out hope for that. So that there's that storyline where she knows what's up. It's her gut. She knows, even though everybody else is like, no, you're crazy. So there's that. But then there's also the storyline where she's trying to train to be a cadet, and she's going to wash out because she's not good enough or something like that. And because they have all of these kind of competing storylines, and again, this happens with the characters too, with Jake, not wanting to be there, but none of them go deep enough.
Right.
And it's a weird dichotomy because we're in a movie that doesn't go deep by design, kind of, like we said, but
it's hard because again, this movie is kind of a mess. Like I think something that I don't know if this gets to where you were going, but the point you were at in the story, mentioning the conscription, we get the single line of dialogue that kind of brings Jake and Mako together, because she's the one that says, you need to do this I need your help and blah blah blah, so that you go back to the army. And Mako is I think Mako in particular, is super, super representative of this movie.
Well, I loved seeing her. And her and Jake's relationship is one of my favorite things of the entire movie.
Yeah, I wish there was actually more of it. I wish it happened longer than 5 minutes, and more than, they had more scenes together than 4.
But by that same token, I buy Jake's commitment after she dies. That is the turning point for Jake, even though it's kind of a less of a turning point because I don't know. It just seems
it's such a cheap thing. Not only was Mako built so well in Pacific Rim, that you then just 10 years later, okay, now she's a boss and who cares and blah blah blah. She's there for like no time, and this is my huge issue with her dying in the first place. They are the first kaiju, or the is it a kaiju, or was it the robot,
rogue Jaeger,
right?
that takes her down? Yeah.
Okay, so the rogue Jaeger and our heroes are going back and forth, and they're fighting, and of course our heroes are Jake hasn't had a lot of experience, and this is supposed to just be, or he hasn't had a lot of experience recently. He's been out of practice. He's not been using Jaegers. He's been doing other stuff. And this is just supposed to be a very simple, the Jaeger's supposed to stand there and Mako is going to talk. And for whatever dumb reason, they show Mako's helicopter take off. Goes the opposite direction. Then they're fighting, and for what? Why? Why is that helicopter so low? There's no reason. It's so low in comparison to where they are, where they should be, and why is it even near them? Why? It is so dumb. I guess
they don't give a reason for her to stick around. She sends a little communique at the last minute before she dies that sends the rest of the movie
right because that couldn't have been done while she was alive somewhere else. They absolutely, in my opinion, ruined her character. That character is so just neutered and broken in this movie, and then they have
compared to the first one,
and then they have and that's what I'm saying. They had this character that could have been anything. She could have been Stacker. She could have been something else where she actually was involved. But no, that they've got to take the character. They've got to kill her because that's the only way you can get Jake to want to be in the army again. That's so cheap and so pathetic, and it's such a bad trope. That's a trope for a reason, kill the family so that the person wants revenge. And
would it have been a better movie if they have waited? All throughout this movie, you get the feeling that they moved ahead with it because, Totoro was probably making Shape of Water or something like that, Like, would it have been a better movie if we just waited until everybody from the first movie signed on to do a sequel? Yeah, I think so. Are we kind of getting the best of what they could do without that? Yeah, probably also.
Maybe.
Like, it is a bummer that Mako dies because I love her character and I love their relationship. But on the same hand, like, I buy Jake's motivation after that. Like, that kind of makes...
Sure, but it's like it is a cheap way of getting there. Like, I don't know how else you do it right now in this movie, but the fact that, like you just have to kill his entire family, and that's it. His dad's already dead. That's why he didn't want to be in the army anymore. So she dies, now I'm back. Like...
And in any event, they don't go all the way on anything. Like, it's not really a revenge movie after that at all.
Right. She comes up like maybe once or twice. And she comes up in like a speech about Mako was great. That's all you hear.
He mentions Raleigh in that speech too.
Right.
That might be the only time he's mentioned also.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's part of what I'm getting at in that a lot of it just kind of scratches the surface and doesn't go anywhere. And some of that is Boyega's portrayal. Like, he's remarkably measured in a lot of it. Like, he brushes a lot of stuff off to the point that you don't really go with him.
It was very much it like for all of this times, and he says it multiple times throughout the movie. He opens the movie with Stacker Pentecost was my father. I am not my father. Like, that's his mantra for a long time, and one of the themes, being that stepping out of the shadow of your family thing. Except he already did that, and he clearly after, like, even when they mentioned that he and Mako haven't like communicated or talked for a while, or that's at least what it seemed like. And then, Mako wants me to help her. Okay. That's all I needed was my sister to say.
Well, we get the scene where he's arrested and then she bails him out, and she's bailed him out a million times, and she's like, I can't do it anymore. The only way I can bail you out this time is if you go back into the Corps. Like, that's, again, a lot of that still works for me because it knows what it is. Like, I'm not looking for more than that.
No, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with how he gets there. It's just, again, this movie is, I like the movie, but if I'm being critical of it, this movie is a total mess. it's such a mess, plot wise, story wise, character wise. Like it just.
I don't know if I'd say mess. Like it just doesn't go all the way.
How about this? A competent mess.
Sure. Okay. I just think its main issue is that it doesn't go all the way with the stuff it does, minus the actual action, like the fights between all the kaijus. Like when the robots punch the monsters, it's still pretty good. Like as a kaiju film, I still think this is a better kaiju film than like any of the new Godzilla movies or
Fair
whatever.
enough.
Like it seems weird to say because I feel like those are very well made movies, but they're almost just not kaiju films. Like this is the modern evolution of a kaiju film.
Sure. So okay. We do have there is some interesting stuff that goes on in this movie though. So as we go forward, you can kind of already tell that that Charlie's character is going to be the bad guy to a point anyways. They kind of make this out to be at first I thought that, so he comes in with his employer Li Wen Xiao. She's the head of the Xiao Corporation building the remote Jaegers, the drone Jaegers. And he is like, instead of being the crazy scientist that he was in the original movie, he's all slicked back. He's all dressed up very nicely. He's very, on top of things. And he's not the big, well, okay. He's not as kind of goobery as he was. He's still kind of but he's trying to be more professional.
Sure. Right. He's goobery with a boss now.
Yeah. And the Xiao character, Li Wen Xiao, she comes off right away as, you're like, okay, the Xiao Corporation is the bad corporation.
Right.
It's such
They've got the competing drone program, and they're trying to shut the.
She's very stern with everybody and very like quick to the point, and doesn't. It's no nonsense, and we find out that Charlie has been consistently drifting with the kaiju brain.
Right.
That they drifted with before, and he is slowly but surely going insane and being kind of taken over by the kaiju,
by the precursors,
through the kaiju brain. So I actually like this. This I thought was kind of cool. Like the whole, it's kind of a telepathy thing, kind of a mind, like it's like an infection in his mind. I kind of like that. Thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I was into it. I thought it was good for his character too, instead of just more, because they were. Him and the English actor
Bern Gorman.
Yes, Bern Gorman. Shoot, I will never forget his name again.
Because he's a weird looking cat, man.
Well, their team in the first movie are great. Like they're super fun.
Yeah.
But I can see I like the update because they're both still around, and one of them is kind of trying to help the other. But I didn't actually even see that coming with Charlie Day's character, that he was going to end up being the actual bad guy. So that's where you're going. Yeah, and
I made an assumption just based on what he looked like in the movie. What he was in the first one to this. It was kind of one of those stark changes where everybody else, that kind of like even the Bern Gorman character, he changed, but not so dramatically. And the fact that not only did Bern Gorman stay there, Charlie specifically left to get more money to do other things. So.
But the whole goober thing is a total smokescreen. Like I didn't see that coming. Actually, I thought it was obviously you think his boss is the bad guy and he's gonna turn at the last moment. But right when he's supposed to make that turn, Bern Gorman is telling him to please come back and help, or give us the data on the Xiao Corporation that shows that their drones are theirs, and the drones are actually little kaiju brains that are infecting which you gotta admit the first couple or 3, 4, 5 drone Jaegers that they drop, that the kaiju brain kind of explodes and they turn into like cyber kaijus.
Okay, so
pretty cool.
So I like that. Yeah. So the evil Jaegers are like kaiju brain, and they kind of pass that information off as it's like a chunk of the brain. It's not the whole thing. It's just a chunk of it.
It's some piece of kaiju in there.
But the other thing we find out is that the inside of the drones, and we don't find this out till much later, is biomechanical. They're using parts of the kaiju to fill out the drones so that they have a different Well, they're just different, and they're basically built so that the brains can kind of connect and the precursors can drive them almost. And it was cool. That was a really cool little addition. I liked that.
The action is good. Like the Jaegers are good. The kaijus are good. There's a part towards the end during that battle where like a bunch of little kaijus come out, and all three of the big kaijus combine into one giant kaiju with all these tiny kaiju.
Yeah, they Voltron.
It's cool. I'm into that. That's good stuff.
So we what this turns into is I will say that first Jaeger that comes out, it's all red and everything, and it starts like it comes out of the water and just starts beating the crap out of Gypsy Avenger. I was really, really hoping that it was gonna end up being Charlie, what's his name from the first one? Charlie Hunnam. I was like, man, let him for some reason be in that thing. That would have been just the greatest turn. It was awesome to see that it's a brain and that they mutated it into like half kaiju, half Jaeger. It was super fun. So we get a little bit further and we find out that all of the kaiju have been beelining for Mount Fuji because Mount Fuji has specific minerals that when combined with kaiju blood is going to cause a massive explosion that's going to just wipe out the entire planet. And I will say when Charlie kind of turns around and he goes, I'm going to destroy the world. Like it was totally one of those really funny, like, oh, right. Charlie Day, you're so adorable.
It's good. Like I said, I liked the movie. I think it delivers in the end too. I think it builds up to something really cool, and there's a little bit of world fudging going on. Like they do get some breaches open, and those three kaijus come through immediately. Like they were waiting. I don't know exactly how this works or what's going on in Precursor Land, but that was a little convenient.
So let me take this from you. I'm gonna jump into some of my issues with the ending and that convenience factor.
Okay. All right.
So there's a movie that came out in the 80s called Space Camp. I love this movie. It's a great movie. Have you seen that movie?
I have not. My wife loves it.
It's a terrific movie, and it's totally it's exactly what it sounds like. Kids go to the space camp, they end up in space, and then they have to use what they learned in space to figure out how to get back home.
Okay.
That's kind of what this movie is. It's the kaiju version of Space Camp, and I mean that in especially the way that they use the cadets that are then suddenly, okay, you guys are good enough. We never saw more than like 5 minutes of them, and then Amara failing drifting, and that's it. Like that's all we get is Amara. Oh, and Amara fights the Russian girl. They fight for a minute.
In that trademark way that it just never goes. Like that's what I'm saying. They have like 3 separate storylines here. They have her washing out as a cadet. They have her with drift issues. Like she can't, like look past it. Blah blah. But it never. Number one, it's from the first movie, so it's a rehash. Period. But yeah, number 2, they just don't ever. They needed one of those things, and they needed 5 more scenes with that one thing. They didn't need all of those things,
right? And so what this leads to is you have 3 more Jaegers or 4 more Jaegers that are piloted by characters you don't really care about, that if they die, they die, big deal. Whereas again, I think that first movie, man, you were interested. I was interested in the Russian pair. I was interested in the Australians. They were super cool. They make a big deal in that first movie about the uniqueness of the Jaegers. And in this, it's Amara going, is that this Jaeger? Is that Jaeger? Oh, that's that Jaeger. And that's it. It's like, I can't remember any of their names. Like, I mean, I can't remember, but like in the original one, I feel like it was Crimson Dawn or something was one of them. I don't know.
Crimson Typhoon.
There you go. And as you pull the toy down, Crimson Typhoon was my favorite.
It's good. Triple Jaeger.
So
triple pilot.
Okay. I was for all of the issues that I've had so far, I'm still kind of digging the movie. We're fine. Okay. Then we get to the part, and I cannot tell you why in the hell this is what strains credulity for me. But man, this right here is where I was just so aggravated. I was like, what? So it's this whole bit where they're fighting the Voltron monster.
Okay.
And at this point, there is a throwaway line by Bern Gorman that says, "Hey, the entire city has been evacuated to the underground. You're free to engage." They just showed the city being overrun and people panicking and running everywhere like 1 second before that line. Okay, let's go ahead and just imagine everybody went kaiju down, and everybody within just seconds were in their underground bunker. We then have this fight between all of the Jaegers and this one giant monster, and one of the Jaegers gets put down, kills a couple of them, and that's the last thing we hear. And that's what leads to Amara finally getting over her drift issues. Like in Toto, she was drifting with somebody here, but now she's got it. She's going to drift with Jake, and they're going to go and take this thing down. And the way they're going to take it down is Jake's brilliant idea of, wait, you got us booster rockets. What if I go to orbit and then I crash into it? Okay, I'm with that. That's a fun idea, but we don't have any more boosters. How are we going to do this? And this is again, I don't know why this is what strains credulity for me, but it does. The Scrapper bot is then picked up and used. The Scrapper Jaeger is picked up by Li Wen Xiao, who then comes over and really fast welds that onto his arm, which he
welds
then
a rocket onto Gypsy Avenger's hand.
Onto his hand, which he then uses to go into space or into the atmosphere to crash down onto the monster, and that's it. It is like the most deflating ending. Like the thing crashes, the monster gets up for a second, and then it falls down. And then you're treated to Amara and Jake going, all right!
Yeah, the Amara Jake touchdown dance afterwards was a little lame. And I will give you that welding the hand onto the rocket was...
I don't know why that, but there's something about it that was just like...
Well, why didn't he just grab on it?
They said it. No, she says you can't just hold on to it because the thrust will rip it right out of your hands.
Whatever. See, that's why they chose that to be a thing. Yeah, I agree. That part I took issue with. Launching a Jaeger into space to orbitally punch a kaiju is freaking rad.
It sounded like a great idea. I will tell you my big...
Dude, let's be clear.
My
that is amazing.
Here's why my biggest problem with that is they had a chance to have a really, really epic scene, an epic shot. And it's just so boring and like... It's like...
I think it all came together. I was never bored.
It's totally... This is totally one of those things where when that Jaeger comes down, it should either punch right through the stupid thing or at least like rip something off of it. It just hits him. And then, oh, darn it, I got a concussion and now I'm done. You know, it's like he got brain swelling and he died.
I don't know. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I thought I did like the end. I think it came
it was like, again, the idea of it coming down and hitting him is great. I just thought it should have been way more destructive than just punching the monster really hard.
It just punches him down the mountain, but you're right. I guess his head survived because he has that little last gasp.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I didn't have a problem with any of that, honestly.
So what ultimately my last note. This is my last note in my thing about this. I'm not saying this is the last thing we'll say. Just my last note because
it probably is. Yeah,
this is how I ultimately felt about this movie. Outside of that, like again, I liked it, but in trying to make this threat something bigger, it made it way less threatening. Like at no point was I watching this movie thinking anybody was going to die. And the two people, except for Mako, who as soon as she showed up, I have it in my notes, she's going to die, isn't she? And then like 8 notes later, she just died. There was nothing, this is a movie where you're watching it because you know what's going to happen. And you just want to see how it's going to happen. Totally cool with that. Totally dig the movie for that, what it is, that popcorn I can turn on. But again, it's something I'm rarely, if ever, going to go back to because it was so shallow. And it was it's
I'm
like
with you on that. Yeah.
It's so shallow. It is. We mentioned this earlier. It's apples to oranges. But in that same way, Transformers is super shallow. This is the trends.
Okay.
It's similar.
Take a step.
I won't. I won't watch either of them. Certainly not Transformers ever again. But
well, the moment I say let's do a show on a Transformers movie, you can end the show.
The show is done at that point. That won't happen. But yeah, I think that the attempt to make this bigger, it made it less threatening for me. It made it less like there was less of a.
I think it's a competent try at what the first one was. And I honestly love that we're having maybe the hardest time talking about any movie that we have so far, talking about Pacific Rim Uprising 2, /. But I think you're right to kind of pinpoint the threat as maybe the thing. Because there's, up until maybe the midway point of the movie, like, you don't know that kaijus, I mean, you know from the previews that kaijus are going to be the thing. But like I said, it's peacetime. It's been 10 years and they haven't seen any kaiju, so they're talking about it like, oh, what are we going to do, when there's not actually any threat. And then the rogue Jaegers start to show up, so there is this mystery, even though you know it's Shao from the very beginning. So there is stuff there that I think is really interesting, that they like. I'm glad that we got to see Jaeger versus Jaeger, because we didn't really get that in the first movie, right?
No, and like that right there is why I was hoping it was going to be Charlie Hunnam or somebody. The Australian guy would have been cool as hell. I was hoping there was going to be something there that ties it back, and it just was like I like the idea of and I like how, for the most part, those rogue Jaegers are put together. Like we already talked, I like that they were biomechanical. I just there was something about it being, oh, it's Charlie Day, manipulating the assembly line and putting in these chunks of things. Oh, okay. Well,
I thought we liked that part.
No, I do. I like that. I like the idea, but again, it goes back to that like there's something, I don't know. There's just something like more. Give me more about that.
Yeah, no. It's this movie is not greater than the sum of its parts, I guess you could say. Like
I agree.
I do think it's a competent try at what it's trying to do at being a follow-up to the first Pacific Rim. But yeah, it's got problems. It's not as tight. I think the people making it knew what it was still. Like, this movie's not a travesty. This isn't like a franchise ruining or, like any of that stuff. But it's just, surprise, it's hard to even make a good one of these not bad movies, but bad movies. You know what I'm saying? Like, a kaiju film isn't necessarily high art. Disagree. But,
yeah, no, 100%. That's
it's
false.
Still hard to make one of those things. I still think Pacific Rim Uprising is a fantastic update of one of those type of movies,
sure,
even if it's not the best. So
no, and I think it's watchable. And if you like the first one, I think you should watch it. But yeah, ultimately, it doesn't live up to the first one, and I can't say that it's going to go in my rewatch circles.
Let's put it this way: 17 stars.
Out of 16.
See? Wait.
Wait, no.
Now I really don't know how this ranking system works.
How many stars did you say?
17.
17 out of 27. That's what I should have done.
All right. Fair enough. And that's Pacific Rim 2. If you did watch it,
thank you.
Yeah.
Let us know what you thought of it.
I'm curious what anybody thinks about this thing.
I would love to get feedback on this, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Anyways. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Book Club for Movies. If you've got questions, you've got concerns, you have things to say, hit us up, podcast at Book Club for Movies. Next week's Book Club for Movies selection is going to be one from the heart. We're going to watch Paddington. And it is available for you to stream on Netflix. It's available for video on demand. You can get it on Xbox Live, Apple, all those places. Check it out, Paddington. I love Paddington Bear. This was a me selection because I really, really, really loved it, and Ryan hasn't seen it all the way through, and I love Paddington Bear.
Paddington so far is one of those movies that I have seen maybe 40 different sections of while my kids have been watching it over the years. So,
but the kids like
excited to see it. It never was an annoying children's movie. So,
do the kids like it?
Oh, they love it. Yeah, I know.
It is. I'm really, really excited for people to. I hope people will check this one out. It's a movie that you will be. It doesn't matter if you know the story of Paddington. It doesn't matter if you like, if you've got kids. This is one of those movies that I think is just genuinely a sweet, lovable movie. Like, it's just, you want to love it, and I think you will.
So tune in next week where I tear it apart in front of Matt.
I can't wait to see the bear's blood will run red.
Just kidding. Let's do the rest of the show. You got any other movies you want to talk about?
I do have movies that I want to talk about.
Go, 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 go.
Go, go, go. We went to the theater this weekend, saw the movie called Upgrade. It is, this movie is...
Forget.
Yes.
I'm excited about this.
Yeah, so Upgrade runs an hour and 40 minutes. It was written and directed by Lee Wannell, starring Logan Marshall Green, Richard Anastasios, Betty Gabriel, and Roscoe Campbell. I just like saying Roscoe. Lee Wannell is best remembered and best known for helping co-create the Saw franchise. He was in the original Saw movie. He was in the room with Cary Elwes. He was the other character that was in the room.
Oh, bald dude?
Nope, that's the Jigsaw Killer, but good work.
So close.
You were there. This movie was, in every respect, just a real joy to watch. What a ton of fun this was. It is, the synopsis is super cool.
I was going to say, for those of us that haven't been fed that trailer 100 times on Facebook, why don't you tell us what that movie's about?
So the movie is essentially about a guy who is paralyzed, becomes a quadriplegic, and is given the opportunity to walk again with a robotic implant called STEM that allows him to, it controls his, it allows his, like the severing that he has in his neck that caused him to be a quadriplegic. It fixes that and essentially sends the brain signals to the body so he can do whatever he wants. But STEM can also take over for him and let his body do whatever it wants, and it's a computer. So this leads to a whole bunch of really cool fight scenes. And there is a great story built around this that like that's your hook, right? That's your hook. The way they get to that and then how it progresses. Holy crap. Really? Just so much fun. It actually builds with it's a really good story. It has the love story component, and it is definitely a revenge story that, as the movie progresses, becomes a little more. I can't. Interesting it's not the right word, but it's like it starts off with this great idea, and then as the revenge kind of kicks up and it goes further and further, things start changing around him and the world and everything, and it's awesome. And one of the things that I really loved about this is that it's in this kind of nebulous future that is kind of future, kind of like present day. It doesn't fully commit to what the future is.
No years on the screen at any point.
No, you don't really ever catch that. There's nothing, there's stuff around, but I didn't, like, at no point is it ever just thrown 2046.
Chicago 2046.
Right. Okay. It's not. You I think they tell you it's in LA. I think, but even that, I don't remember them ever explicitly saying anything about
that's
setting.
Where they make most movies.
That's true. So there are like a ton of things in here that even like that are relevant today. There's self-driving cars, and there's an entire section about what happens with self-driving cars if somebody hacks it, and then other things go wrong. It's great, and it gets a whole bunch of the tech stuff. Their movie has a whole bunch of interesting concepts in regards to body modification and the becoming more human than human, I guess, like that whole cybernetic, the bioengineering thing, from Pacific Rim. It's that.
Does it try to do that super hard, or does it stay true to the type of movie it is? Kind of.
It's inherent in the movie because it's just like it's part of the movie, and that's, I guess, what I'm getting at. Even with the world, like it's stuff that's there. This is not a story. This is not a movie about finding out what the world is. It's not a movie about finding out what all the different things are. They talk about some specific biomods because they're relevant to the movie itself.
But not a lot of hand wringing about like,
nope.
Is this like, what is humanity?
No. This is, that is an overarching theme.
Sure.
Is humanity and the how STEM interacts with the main character and what means. And there are so many good little directorial decisions and acting decisions There's some, again, great fights. There's some really good gore shots. There's some really good gore. The first one, nobody in the theater saw coming, and everybody, I have never heard a theater as loud all at the same time go, whoa! People were laughing and clapping. Like, it was one of those moments that you just kind of like you didn't see it coming. You just didn't. And it's great. I can't say enough good things about this movie. I highly recommend you catch this in the theater if you can. It's worth seeing with a crowd for sure if you can.
Sure.
And it was great. It was. We had a pretty packed theater, and the movie is super fun. It's well put together, well directed. The dialogue for the most part's really good. There's a couple of hokey things in there, but there's always hokey things. And I got
There's a couple of hokey things in the movie about the guy that gets robots.
The two things that I have to call out. One of them being one of the actors. He is a character that is providing the STEM thing and trying to help this guy.
The bald guy from Saw?
He is not the bald. Very close. It's almost Jigsaw.
Dang it.
This kid has he's got bleach blonde hair, and you can tell he's this weird amalgamation of Rami Malek in Mr. Robot and Jared Leto in anything that's, because he's awful. And the guy is not bad. He just screams those two people in everything he's doing. And the other thing that I have got to say, I will not spoil it. I won't even give you a hint, but this movie has an all-timer ending, man. That third act pays off in such a good way.
So it's got more gore.
Nope. It's not a gore thing. It is not a gore. It is actually a story thing. It pays off, man.
Story gore?
That movie pays off. And it pays off in one of the best ways I've seen in forever. I did not see that coming at all. I just didn't. And it was great. So again, I recommend it. Upgrade, check it out. It's in theaters now.
All right.
What do you got?
So I've been trying to Friedkin some more. I think we talked about Rules of Engagement and Sorcerer are my two outstanders. I've heard Sorcerer is pretty good.
Yeah, I've told you that.
I watched Rules of Engagement.
Did that have the bald guy from Saw?
I wish. It might have. The sad truth is I barely remember what that guy looks like.
He looks like a bald guy.
So, but what if before he had hair? I would have no idea.
I met him at Texas Frightmare.
Really?
Yeah. I got his autograph.
The bald guy from Saw?
Yeah.
See?
Is the Jigsaw Killer.
I knew. Yeah. That would come in handy at some point. Rules of Engagement is a fine movie. And this is coming off of our discussion. We did, obviously, the French Connection last week. Mm-hmm. And I talked about The Hunted.
Mm-hmm.
That same week? Was that last week too?
Yep. Okay. That might have been the week before, actually.
Maybe.
Because I think that's what led into...
Yes.
Because I don't think you knew...
The Hunted was weird, and I didn't know Friedkin did it, and then I was like, what else has he done besides Exorcist, obviously? And then I was like, yes. So I've been trying to do... This will happen sometimes. I'll go on a director trip.
Yeah, it's fun.
And Friedkin was certainly one, after hearing that The Hunted was supposed to be good, and after seeing that the French Connection was flat out amazing... wanted to get a feel for his work more. Mm-hmm. You said The Sorcerer was really good too. Rules of Engagement, it came out in 2000. It's kind of that.
Is this the one with Sam Jackson?
Yes, Samuel Jackson, Tommy Lee Jones. Begins there in Vietnam, and Samuel Jackson has to shoot a dude so that Tommy Lee Jones can get out alive. And then there's another job that Samuel L. Jackson is sent to extract an ambassador from the embassy in Yemen.
Sure. The Yemeni embassy.
And that scene's actually really good. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know why that's so funny.
It's good. I'm thrilled.
And that scene's actually really good. And I got the feeling early on that it was really good because the whole rest of the movie is going to hinge on it. I was like, this is probably one of those things where it turns into this multiple stories about this extraction and what went wrong, and he gets accused. That's what happens. Like
it's
it goes fine.
It's the Few Good Men thing.
Yes, it is, and it's a courtroom drama for a large part of the movie. What happens though is for the first half, it kind of does the same thing The Hunted did for its first half, where it tries to very obliquely paint the characters of Samuel L. Jackson in The Hunted, Benicio del Toro, to the point where you don't know if they're guilty or not necessarily. Like the whole event here hinges on Samuel L. Jackson's order to fire on the crowd, which when the viewer, we see the movie, you don't see any guns. So it does look like he unjustifiably had his Marines fire on that crowd. Mm-hmm. There's a tape, but you don't get to see what's on the tape either. The NSA guy is like, I don't want anybody to see this tape. We basically just want to court-martial Samuel L. Jackson, and somebody's got to pay for this, et cetera, et cetera. So the first half of the movie doesn't give you that. It gives you two characters, Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel L. Jackson, and paints a picture and tries to kind of get you into their heads, which is fine, and those guys are competent. And if you want somebody that's got a duality to him, then Samuel L. Jackson's the way to go.
Sure.
Like he's the Marine who gave the order to fire on the crowd very heatedly, but also the guy that can sit in a courtroom and look like he's not going to kill you for a while until he raises his voice. So real good as far as that goes.
Sam Jackson in real life.
Yeah, probably. And it's fine up until that halfway mark where they straight up drop the tape on you. You see the tape and it has the crowd with guns firing on them. So now and immediately at that point that Samuel Jackson's the good guy, or that he's telling the truth at the very least.
Right.
And it's kind of, again, in The Hunted, where Benicio del Toro kills a dude flat out, and that he's gone crazy and he's the bad guy. In both cases, strangely enough, it's left up to Tommy Lee Jones to kind of figure stuff out. In this case, he's his war buddy that comes back, and he wants him to be his lawyer. So Tommy Lee Jones is tasked with, kind of figuring out what role his friend played. And when it basically becomes a courtroom drama after that, it's a pretty good movie. Like it succeeds and is the best it is at that point on. But it's still uneven. Like Tommy Lee Jones for the first 2 minutes totally and almost word for word does the whole, I'm just a small town lawyer. I was scared to take this job. I was thrown up in the bathroom 2 years. And then after that scene, for the rest of the movie, freaking kills it. Like objects at everything, like nails a dude to the wall, like all it's tense. Like, 'cause the other guy is Guy Pearce, and he's doing a great job. He's kind of the young upstart who's never been in battle thing.
Love Guy Pearce.
Yeah, he's good. But Tommy Lee Jones kills it. Like there's never any doubt, after his whole country lawyer routine at the beginning. I'm probably talking about this too much already, but it's not as bad as The Hunted, but it's weird in that The French Connection was this thing where we didn't know about Gene Hackman's character. We didn't know about Popeye Doyle really until the very end.
Right.
Like, we know he's racist right off the beginning. We know he shoots a guy in the back halfway through the movie. Like, we know, and it's funny because I never actually read the words on the poster. We know that, quote unquote, he's a bad cop. That's what it says right on the movie poster.
It's true. He is.
And check out last week's show. We talk about how kind of the circumstances of the movie try and mitigate that character a little bit.
Sure.
And maybe depending on how much you buy into that sort of stuff, probably more back then than you do now. Like,
right.
Bad cops are a little bit more front and center, I guess you could say.
I would.
But here in Rules of Engagement, number one, we find out that Samuel L. Jackson is the guy he is halfway through, at least. Like, who Sam Jackson is kind of right off the bat. But when we see that tape with the guns in their hands, like halfway through, we basically know that he's telling the truth and et cetera, blah, blah, whatever. We didn't know Popeye Doyle was really irredeemable until he kills the other cop and moves on.
Right.
So the character work and Rules of Engagement for that first half informs the second half, but not really enough that makes it super impactful. And in a way that doesn't give me a real good handle on Friedkin as a director, which is kind of what I'm hoping for, is kind of get his style or his signature or whatever it is down. And I'm choosing the wrong movies, obviously. Like I'm working.
Okay. So the thing with Friedkin though is he's kind of all over the place. All right. He's one of those directors that definitely has his high highs and his low lows.
And at some point, directors take work. Like he's probably not. A lot of directors are probably not all that interested in a auteur body of work or something like that. You know, like
right.
I don't think movies like The Hunted and Rules of Engagement really fall into that. It's just that they have these aspects to them. Like The Hunted begins with that scripture, and Rules of Engagement begins with you know, kind of this high-minded patriotism.
Yes,
maybe not high-minded at the end, very much high-minded, and doesn't really like. Rules of Engagement is better. Like it lands that more than The Hunted did, but
sure,
not in a way that I'm like, oh man, like Friedkin, like he's got his thing and he does his thing. Like there's no French Connection here really for me. There's no. I'm hoping The Sorcerer is going to fill in some of these gaps. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and Sorcerer is it is a very, very different movie. I mean, it's. I will tell you that I think he has a number of movies that are very good, that are also not necessarily the things you want to watch. Most recently, he did a movie called Killer Joe. I love Killer Joe. Killer Joe was a great, great movie. It's got McConaughey in it. It's got Emile Hirsch in it. But it's a movie that it's got what's his name, Sandman, and was in Wings. That guy, Thomas Hayden Church. Great cast, great movie, great story. Really, really disturbing on some weird levels. He did a movie years back with Michael Shannon and Ashley Judd called Bug. Really weird movie, really disturbing on some bizarre levels. A movie that you would never expect from a guy like him. I highly recommend. I actually think it's not only just a good movie, I think it's actually one of the better basketball movies that's come out. He made this movie called Blue Chips it's got Nick Nolte as the star, Mary McDonnell, and then it has Shaquille O'Neal, Anthony Hardaway, and there was somebody else that's in it too. And yeah, it's funny, but it's an actual serious movie about paying college players and corruption in the NCAA, and it's a shockingly great movie. You watch it, and then you watch The French Connection, and you're like, what the hell? Where did that come? How did that happen? But it's still a good movie. It's just very different, you know?
Okay.
Sorcerer, I think, is what you're kind of looking for. I do think that when you watch that, you'll see the Friedkin that made The Exorcist, the one that made The French Connection. You'll go, okay. Right. And then I don't know if it's just, you know, he got older and things changed. I don't know if his sensibilities were different.
Yeah, I honestly, this is the worst way to go about it. Like watching later career movies like this is not.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because you see those movies and then you go back and you see The French Connection, and it does kind of, you can see how certain things get informed by what he's doing and what's not informed by it too.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll freaking darned if I didn't tear up at that. Like there's a salute at the end of that movie, and the movie is kind of problematic too. Like I know it's seen a lot of criticism as far as its portrayal of Arabs and whatnot.
Sure.
But at the beginning of the movie in Vietnam, like he shoots a dude in the head to get the other guy to tell his troops to leave so Tommy Lee Jones can survive. They get that guy to testify at the end of the movie, and when, spoiler, Samuel Jackson is declared innocent, he walks out and he sees that Vietnamese colonel or whatever, like getting into his car. Colonel turns around and gives him a salute, and Samuel Jackson looks at him, gives him a salute too. So I don't know if it's completely earned, but I did, and even before that salute, start to think about, you know, like the kind of people that we put in charge and why we put them in charge. So it succeeds on some levels, and like I said, darn if I didn't, you know, tear up at that salute, kind of like about it being just, you know, like patriotism at best is doing the best with a bad situation. Something like in the dirt type thing, you know.
Sure.
Saluting the flag is scratching the surface. The saluting the flag is like patriotism, like Pacific Rim 2 Uprising is, I can't finish the sentence, but Book Club for Movies is our podcast. And
check out the movie's Upgrade. It's in the theaters now. If you're interested in Rules of Engagement, it's not the TV show with David Spade. You might be disappointed or you might be significantly happier. Either way, give it a go. Remember, we are at podcast@bookclubformovies.com. You can find us on Twitter. We're on the Instagrams and the Facebooks and all of that stuff. Hit us up. Let us know if you got suggestions for movies you'd like to see. If you got a comment on either of these movies we watched. If you want to get involved, join the club. We're going to check out.
If you want to suggest we watch Paddington next week, send us an email and suggest that. You'll be right. We'll take your suggestion.
Bam. You just suggested it. Thank you, viewers. Book Club out.